Talia Williams, a 68-year-old retired schoolteacher, had always prided herself on being independent. She spent her days tending to her rose garden, reading her favorite novels, and volunteering at the local community center. Life had slowed down, but in a way that she welcomed, surrounded by familiar faces and routines. But there was one thing that had begun to haunt her nights, something that she never expected to become part of her daily existence. Every night, like clockwork, Talia would wake up, her bladder pressing for attention. It started with one trip to the bathroom, then another, and before she knew it, she was up 3 or 4 times each night. The constant interruptions left her feeling drained and irritated, not to mention the fear that this might be just another sign of aging she would have to accept. At first, she tried to brush it off. After all, didn't everyone over 60 have to deal with things like this? But soon, the late-night trips became more than just inconvenient. They affected her ability to fall back asleep. Some nights, Talia lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering why she couldn't just rest like she used to. What's going on? She would ask herself. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion, it was the emotional toll it took on her. The isolation she felt in the quiet of the night, the constant worry about the next trip to the bathroom, and the nagging sense that her body was betraying her. One day, after another exhausting night, Talia finally decided to speak up. She went to her doctor, hoping to find an answer, some reassurance that this was just a normal part of aging. But when Dr. Miller gently explained that there was more to this problem than just getting older, it hit her like a wave. "Talia," he said softly, "your hydration habits might be causing this. It's not about your age, it's about when and how much you're drinking." His words lingered in her mind long after she left the office. Could it really be that simple? Could the way she drank water be the key to fixing this nightly struggle? That day marked the beginning of Talia's transformation. She dove into learning more about hydration and its impact on sleep. She discovered that drinking too much water in the evening, especially close to bedtime, was putting unnecessary strain on her bladder and kidneys. With a bit of guidance, Talia started adjusting her habits. She began drinking the majority of her water earlier in the day, while her body was more equipped to process it. By dinner time, she sipped only small amounts, and after 7 p.m., she made a conscious effort to limit her intake. It wasn't easy at first, but slowly the changes began to take effect. Talia's journey wasn't just about adjusting her water intake. It was about reclaiming control over her nights and her life. Over time, she noticed a significant difference. The wake-ups became less frequent, and when she did wake up, it wasn't with the same urgent need to rush to the bathroom. Her sleep improved, and so did her mood. She was no longer feeling like a prisoner to her bladder. She had found a way to live more fully, to enjoy the simple pleasures of her evenings without the constant anxiety of the next bathroom trip. Talia had learned that by making small, intentional changes, she could regain the rest and peace that she so desperately needed, and in turn, she gained back a piece of herself she thought had been lost forever. Talia Williams had always been a woman of routine. She rose with the sun, brewed her favorite coffee, and spent her mornings tending to her flowers. She had grown accustomed to the steady rhythm of life after retirement. But there was something that had begun to unsettle her, a shift she could no longer ignore. For the past few months, the nights she once enjoyed now felt like an endless cycle of frustration. No sooner had her head hit the pillow than she would wake up again. The first trip to the bathroom would seem like a brief inconvenience, but as the hours dragged on, the trips became more frequent until it felt as if sleep was nothing more than a distant memory. At first, Talia thought it was just the natural course of aging. Perhaps her body was simply telling her it was time to slow down even more, to accept the inevitable changes that came with getting older. After all, didn't everyone her age have to deal with a little inconvenience here and there? But what was supposed to be an occasional disruption quickly became the central theme of her nights. It wasn't just the inconvenience of waking up, it was the emotional toll it took. How each time she sat on the edge of the bed, tired eyes staring at the floor, she wondered if something was wrong with her. The worst part was that this wasn't something she could talk about easily. Talia's friends, her family, they all seemed to be enjoying peaceful nights, unbothered by the constant need to go to the bathroom. Whenever she mentioned it to her daughter, Anne, she would just smile and say, "It's probably just your age, Mom." The words stung more than she expected. They weren't cruel, but they held an assumption that this was something she just had to endure. There was no solution, no help, just the quiet acceptance that this was a part of growing older. But Talia wasn't ready to accept it. She still had so much left to do: gardening, reading, and even travel. She couldn't let something as simple as her bladder steal that from her. By the time it was well past midnight and Talia found herself walking the cold hallways for the third time that night, she decided enough was enough. She couldn't go on like this, tired, frustrated, and worn down. The next day, she made an appointment with Dr. Miller, her longtime family doctor. If anyone had an answer, it was him. She just needed to know what was happening and why. As Talia sat in the familiar waiting room, her mind raced. She wasn't sure what to expect from the doctor, but she had a gut feeling that the answer wasn't going to be as simple as, "It's just your age." She had been going through these nightly wake-ups for months now, and the feeling of helplessness was starting to wear her down. She glanced at her watch. It was nearly time. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Whatever came next, she was ready to hear it. When Dr. Miller finally walked in, Talia felt a wave of relief. He had a warm smile and a gentle presence that immediately put her at ease. After a few minutes of small talk, he got right to the point. "Talia," he began softly, "I think I have an idea of what's going on, and it's something many seniors experience, but few talk about." He then explained how hydration, something so simple and often taken for granted, could be the root cause of her problems. It wasn't about her age or some inevitable part of growing older. It was about how her body was processing fluids at night and how the timing of her water intake could be throwing off the balance of her sleep. "I know it sounds strange, but I believe that with some simple changes in how you drink water throughout the day, you can fix this," Dr. Miller said. Talia listened closely, not sure what to make of this revelation. She had always been told that staying hydrated was key to good health, but to hear that it could be the very thing keeping her from a restful night's sleep was eye-opening. Dr. Miller went on to explain that our kidneys, which are responsible for filtering out waste from the body, slow down in the evening. If too much water was consumed too late in the day, the kidneys would have to work overtime, pushing water into the bladder and leading to multiple trips to the bathroom during the night. Talia's instincts kicked in. This made sense. She had been drinking water throughout the evening to stay hydrated, thinking that this was a good thing. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized how this pattern had become a regular part of her nightly routine. Talia left Dr. Miller's office feeling both confused and hopeful. Could something as simple as when she drank water really solve the problem? She wasn't sure, but she was ready to try. The frustration and exhaustion of her sleepless nights had taken a toll on her well-being, and now she had a glimmer of hope that change was possible. But as she stepped out into the warm afternoon sun, Talia couldn't help but wonder, how could she begin? What would be the first step in reclaiming her sleep and, in turn, her life? And most importantly, could she really make this transformation, or would it just be another dead end? The questions lingered, but one thing was clear. Talia wasn't about to give up without trying. The path to better sleep had just begun. Over the next few days, Talia couldn't stop thinking about Dr. Miller's words. She found herself revisiting the idea of adjusting her water intake. The notion that something as simple as when she drank water could change her nights was difficult to grasp, but the more she thought about it, the more sense it made. She had always been diligent about drinking plenty of water, especially in the evenings when she often felt parched after dinner. Yet, according to Dr. Miller, that could very well be the problem. Talia decided to begin with the smallest of changes. She had nothing to lose and everything to gain. That evening, as she sat down to her usual dinner of roasted chicken and steamed vegetables, she made a conscious effort to cut back on the amount of water she consumed with her meal. Instead of finishing her glass before clearing the table, she left a small amount behind. She would continue to hydrate through the day, but she was determined to be mindful of the time. It wasn't just about how much she drank, it was about when she drank it. The following morning, she started her day with a full glass of water, just as she always had. This time, though, Talia followed Dr. Miller's advice and made sure to drink at least 70% of her daily water intake before 3 p.m. In the past, she had often forgotten to drink water during the morning and afternoon, thinking that she could make up for it later. But now she was more intentional. Throughout the day, she kept a glass of water by her side, sipping it slowly as she went about her tasks, watering the plants, reading, and organizing a few files. By mid-afternoon, Talia had already consumed the majority of the water she needed for the day, and she began tapering off in the hours that followed. It wasn't a huge shift, but Talia noticed something subtle yet significant almost immediately. As she moved through her day, she didn't feel as thirsty as she used to in the evening. Her body seemed to be adjusting, and that afternoon, as she prepared for her evening walk, she realized she hadn't felt the urge to overdrink. There was something calming in that. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she was in control of her habits instead of being ruled by them. The true test would come that night. After dinner, Talia resisted the urge to drink her usual glass of water while sitting on the couch. Instead, she opted for a small sip, just enough to stay comfortable, but nothing that would fill her bladder. As she settled into bed later that evening, she felt a strange mixture of hope and uncertainty. Would this simple change really make a difference, or was it just another futile attempt to regain her lost sleep? As the night progressed, Talia's initial concern proved to be unfounded. For the first time in weeks, she woke up only once. The usual rush to the bathroom didn't hit her as soon as her eyes fluttered open. Instead, she lay there, blinking at the soft moonlight coming through the curtains, thinking that perhaps she had dreamed it. Maybe she had simply slept through the night. She checked the clock. It was 4:30 a.m. Not bad, she thought, as she made her way to the bathroom. When she returned to bed, she was able to fall back asleep right away. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. By morning, Talia had already noticed the difference. She woke up feeling more rested, less groggy, and surprisingly less stressed about the day ahead. It wasn't a perfect night of sleep, but it was a marked improvement, and that gave her hope. As she sat at her kitchen table sipping her morning coffee, she reflected on the changes she had made. This wasn't just about drinking less water at night, it was about becoming aware of her body's rhythms, understanding how simple adjustments could restore balance. That morning, Anne called, checking in on her. "How did you sleep last night, Mom?" she asked with a tone of curiosity. Talia smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. "Better," she replied simply. "Not perfect, but better." She felt a sense of pride in her voice, knowing that she was taking control of her health and making the changes she needed to feel like herself again. Anne was quiet for a moment before responding. "I'm glad to hear that. Maybe this will help." Her words were gentle, but they carried the love and concern that only a daughter could offer. Talia was touched, grateful for the support, even if it wasn't a loud celebration. She knew Anne didn't fully understand the depth of her struggle, but the simple acknowledgement was enough to make Talia feel less alone. As the days went by, Talia continued her new hydration habits, gradually tweaking her routine based on how her body responded. By now, she was drinking more water earlier in the day and becoming more mindful of when she sipped, especially as evening approached. The results were becoming undeniable. Her trips to the bathroom were fewer, and when she did wake up, the urgency wasn't as overwhelming. She wasn't exactly sleeping through the night just yet, but Talia had a renewed sense of peace. These small changes were making a difference, and it felt like she was slowly but surely finding her way back to the peaceful nights she longed for. This newfound clarity wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. Talia realized that this journey wasn't just about drinking less water or adjusting her habits. It was about taking control of her health again. In a world that often tells us to just accept the changes of aging, Talia had proven to herself that she could still make a difference in how she lived. And that knowledge, that quiet power, was far more valuable than any prescription or quick fix. As the days turned into weeks, Talia began to notice something that surprised her: how much better she felt, not just physically, but emotionally as well. The restless nights were becoming fewer, and the grogginess she had woken up with for so long was starting to fade away. But it wasn't just about sleeping through the night. It was about the calm she felt knowing that she had the ability to change her habits. Talia had always prided herself on her independence, and this journey of small, intentional changes was giving her back a sense of control that had slowly slipped away with age. One evening, as she was putting the finishing touches on a batch of her famous lemon bars, something she hadn't done in ages, Talia reflected on how far she had come. The past few weeks had brought her more than just a reprieve from sleepless nights. They had brought her peace of mind. The act of simplifying her hydration routine had taught her something profound. Sometimes it's the smallest adjustments that make the biggest difference. She could now look forward to her evenings, not with the dread of interrupted sleep, but with the quiet confidence that comes with knowing she was doing the right things for her body. That night, as Talia made her way to bed, she was more relaxed than she had been in months. The evening had gone by smoothly. Dinner had been light, and her glass of water had been minimal after 7 p.m., just as she had been practicing. She hadn't needed to rush to the bathroom as soon as she lay down. When she did wake up, it was later in the night, around 3:30 a.m., but it wasn't a frantic race to relieve herself. The urgency wasn't as intense, and when she returned to bed, she was able to fall back asleep almost immediately. She was, for the first time in a long time, confident in her ability to change. The struggles of the past few months, those sleepless nights, the frustration of not knowing what was wrong, seemed so distant now. She had taken control, made simple choices, and had begun to see the results. But it wasn't just the sleep. It was the feeling that her body was listening to her again. That in itself was worth more than any prescription or quick fix could offer. The next day, Anne came over to visit, bringing lunch and, as always, her warm, thoughtful energy. As they sat down to eat, Talia couldn't help but share her success. "I've been sleeping so much better, Anne," she said, a soft smile on her face. "Not perfect yet, but I'm getting there. It's amazing what a little change in how I drink water can do." Anne looked at her with a raised eyebrow. "Really? I'm glad to hear that, Mom. I knew you could do it, though. You've always been strong." Talia chuckled, feeling a wave of gratitude for her daughter's quiet support. "It wasn't just strength, sweetie. It was just realizing that something so simple could make such a difference. I'm learning to listen to my body instead of letting it run the show." Anne smiled, her face lighting up with pride. "Well, it sounds like you're on the right track. You've always been so careful with everything. Your health, your habits. I'm glad you're finding a way to make it work for you." As they shared lunch, Talia felt the weight of her recent journey sink in. These small, consistent changes weren't just about hydration, they were about reclaiming her autonomy, her sense of self. For so long, she had allowed aging to dictate the terms of her life. But now, Talia realized, she was the one calling the shots. And the best part? She didn't need any fancy treatments or pills to get there. She had simply learned to be more mindful. That evening, she went on her walk as usual. She felt light, not burdened by the heaviness that had once come with sleepless nights. The fresh air and the sound of her footsteps were grounding. She didn't rush. She took her time, noticing the blooming flowers, the way the sun's rays filtered through the trees. Everything seemed a little more vibrant now. She was no longer in a fog of exhaustion. And it wasn't just because of the better sleep, it was because she had made peace with her body again. When Talia returned home, she was eager to finish her evening routine and settle into bed. The small changes in her water intake were now second nature, and it felt good to see how something so simple could bring such powerful results. As she drifted off to sleep that night, her mind was calm and her body felt at ease. She didn't dread the nighttime anymore. She had found a rhythm that worked for her, and with that came a renewed sense of freedom. It was then that Talia realized something important. This wasn't just about hydration or sleep. It was about respecting her body, listening to it, and giving it what it needed to thrive. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was truly in sync with herself. It wasn't about perfect sleep every night. It was about the peace of knowing she had taken the steps to improve her life. And that peace, Talia knew, was priceless. As Talia continued with her new hydration routine, she found herself reflecting on the subtle shifts that were taking place. It wasn't just about the physical changes, though those were certainly noticeable. It was also about her mindset. She had always been a woman who prided herself on being in control, and after the past few weeks, she could feel that sense of agency returning. Her days no longer revolved around the dread of the next sleepless night. Instead, she woke up with a sense of purpose, ready to take on the day with a clearer head. There was something profoundly empowering about taking small, consistent actions that had such a noticeable impact. But this journey wasn't without its challenges. As much as Talia had learned to trust in her new hydration habits, there were moments when the old habits crept in. Moments when she felt thirsty in the evening and automatically reached for a glass of water, only to pause and remember the new rules she had set for herself. There were nights when the pull of habit seemed stronger than her resolve. Yet each time she resisted that temptation, it felt like a small victory. She knew that consistency was key. These changes wouldn't happen overnight, but she was determined to make them stick. One evening, as Talia was sitting in her favorite armchair, reading a mystery novel that had long been on her bookshelf, she realized how much she had missed this quiet, uninterrupted time. The days of rushing to the bathroom every few hours had been replaced by calm moments like these, where the only thing that mattered was the story unfolding in her hands. She felt more present, more connected to the world around her, and it was all because she had learned to listen to her body. The decision to hydrate more thoughtfully had made room for so many small pleasures, and Talia began to understand that this wasn't just a temporary fix, it was a lifestyle change. And that lifestyle, though simple, had far-reaching effects that she was just beginning to grasp. The transformation wasn't just physical. It had seeped into every corner of her life. She found herself enjoying her daily routines with a renewed sense of gratitude. Her mornings, once filled with foggy, half-asleep moments, were now a time of clarity. She didn't feel rushed to get out of bed to start her day. Instead, she woke up refreshed, grateful for the rest she had so longed for. And even though the nights weren't yet perfect, she had learned to embrace the process, the gentle progress that was slowly but surely bringing her closer to the sleep she had once taken for granted. That was when Talia made another key realization. She was no longer afraid of aging. For so long, the idea of getting older had been tied to decline, to losing control, and to simply accepting whatever came her way. But now, as she felt more in tune with her body, she understood that aging didn't have to mean giving up. It could mean finding new ways to thrive, to adapt, and to keep learning. This journey had taught her that even as the body changed, the mind and spirit could remain as strong as ever. It was all about choice, about making decisions that aligned with her health and well-being, no matter what stage of life she was in. One afternoon, as she sat across from Anne at the kitchen table, Talia felt a sense of pride as she shared her progress. "I'm finally sleeping better," she said, her voice full of conviction. "Not perfect every night, but I'm getting there. And I feel like I have more control now. It's been a journey, but I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel." Anne smiled, her eyes soft with understanding. "I'm so proud of you, Mom. I know it hasn't been easy, but it's inspiring to see you take control like this. You've always been the one to teach me about resilience, and now you're showing me what it looks like in action." Talia's heart swelled with gratitude. She had always known Anne to be strong, but hearing her daughter speak with such admiration gave her the sense that she was not just helping herself, but also setting an example for the next generation. It was a beautiful, full-circle moment. The confidence Talia was gaining in her own health was having a ripple effect, reaching beyond just her own life. She wasn't just living for herself anymore. She was living as a testament to the idea that it's never too late to change, to grow, and to live with intention. As the weeks went by, Talia continued to fine-tune her hydration routine, making small adjustments as she went along. But more than that, she began to trust herself, trust that she knew her body better than anyone else could. And with that trust came a deep sense of peace. She had faced a challenge that felt insurmountable, and she had turned it into an opportunity for growth. Each night, as she drifted off to sleep, Talia knew that she was taking the right steps to reclaim her health. And for the first time in a long time, she felt ready for whatever the future held. As the days turned into months, Talia felt a growing sense of peace that had been absent for so long. The simple act of adjusting her hydration routine had led to a transformation she hadn't expected. It wasn't just the relief of fewer bathroom trips during the night, it was the quiet confidence that she had taken charge of her health, and in doing so had started to regain control over the direction of her life. One evening, as she prepared a light dinner of grilled salmon and a crisp green salad, she found herself smiling without even realizing it. The kitchen felt warm and inviting, the scent of fresh herbs filling the air. It wasn't just the food, it was the life she was now living. Talia had always enjoyed cooking, but in recent years, it had felt more like a routine rather than a passion. Now, with clearer days and more restful nights, she rediscovered the joy of nurturing herself in simple ways, like making a nourishing meal from scratch. It wasn't about the food itself, it was about how it reflected a shift in her mindset. She was no longer in a rush, no longer driven by a sense of urgency. She could take her time, savor the small moments, and truly enjoy life again. Later that evening, as Talia settled into her chair with a cup of chamomile tea, her thoughts turned to the months that had passed. The road to better sleep had been far from easy, and there were nights when she felt like giving up. But she had persevered, and now she could look back and see how far she had come. Sleep had once been a battle she thought she was destined to lose, but now it felt like an ally again. She could rest without fear of waking up in the middle of the night, her bladder demanding attention. The balance she had found, with its small but consistent changes, had restored something much more precious than just a good night's sleep. It had restored her peace of mind. Her confidence was growing in other areas of her life as well. The once dreaded trips to the doctor's office had become easier. When Talia went for her routine checkup, she found herself walking in with a sense of calm, ready to share the progress she had made. She had taken Dr. Miller's advice and run with it, finding not just physical relief but a deeper understanding of her body's needs. And it was this newfound knowledge that gave her the courage to ask questions, to speak up, and to take even more proactive steps for her health. One afternoon, as she sat with Dr. Miller in his office for her latest visit, she shared how much better she had been feeling. "I've been sleeping better, and it's not just about the water. I feel like I'm more in tune with what my body needs now," she told him, a quiet pride in her voice. Dr. Miller smiled, his eyes warm with approval. "That's the most important thing, Talia," he said. "Your body has been sending you signals for a long time, and now you're listening. You've taken control of your health, and that's a powerful thing." As she left his office, Talia felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She wasn't just managing her health, she was thriving. This was a far cry from the anxious woman she had been, consumed by fear of what aging would mean for her. Now, aging didn't feel like a slow descent into decline. It felt like a new chapter, one where she was learning, growing, and adjusting to the rhythm of her body. There was no shame in change, no fear in growth. With each step, Talia was proving to herself that it wasn't the passing of time that defined her, it was how she chose to live within it. In the following weeks, as Talia continued her routine, she also began to embrace new habits. She added small walks after dinner, noticing how much better she felt when she moved her body. Her knees, which had once ached with every step, now felt more stable, more supported. She even began to experiment with new foods, learning more about the nutrients that supported her body's needs as she aged. Her diet became more balanced, focusing on whole foods, leafy greens, lean proteins, and plenty of fiber. It was all part of a larger picture, living in harmony with herself and her body. Anne noticed the change too. During one of their phone calls, Anne remarked, "You're looking so good, Mom. It's like you found a new energy." Talia laughed softly, but there was truth in her daughter's words. It wasn't just her physical health, it was her spirit. She felt more present, more engaged with the world around her. Her sense of confidence had seeped into every part of her life, from the way she moved to the way she interacted with others. She no longer felt like an observer of her own life. She felt like a participant, an active creator of her own story. One evening, as Talia sat on her porch watching the sunset, she reflected on the changes that had taken place. Her days were no longer defined by the struggle for sleep. Instead, they were filled with moments of joy, whether it was a quiet afternoon with a book, a walk through the neighborhood, or a dinner shared with friends. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow over her backyard, Talia realized that this, right here, was what it meant to live fully. She didn't need a perfect night's sleep to be happy. She needed to be present in her life, to take the steps that helped her feel healthy, empowered, and at peace. The journey wasn't over, it never would be. But Talia had learned that small, consistent changes could lead to powerful transformations. And that, more than anything, gave her the strength to embrace whatever came next with open arms. The weeks continued to unfold gently, each day bringing a little more peace, a little more stability. Talia's nights had transformed in ways she hadn't even anticipated. Yes, she was still waking up on occasion, but it wasn't the constant interruption it had once been. The deep fatigue that had hung over her like a cloud was beginning to lift, replaced by an energy that felt entirely new. She hadn't expected to feel so vibrant again, especially after so many months of frustration and fatigue. It was as if she had rediscovered a part of herself that had been hidden away, buried under the weight of sleepless nights and endless worry. But it wasn't just the sleep. It was everything else that had come with it, the sense of control, the emotional resilience, and most importantly, the understanding that aging didn't have to mean losing control. For so long, Talia had feared that her body would betray her as she grew older, that she would have to simply accept the decline that seemed inevitable for everyone around her. But now, as she embraced her new habits, listening to her body's needs, nourishing herself properly, and finding balance, she realized that aging could be an opportunity for growth, not just a slow descent into fragility. One morning, as Talia walked through the park, she found herself reflecting on this new perspective. The trees were starting to show the first signs of spring, their leaves tinged with shades of green and yellow. It was a reminder that life didn't stop moving forward, and neither should she. There had been times in the past when she felt as though she was simply waiting for the next chapter, waiting for the inevitable decline that was whispered about by her friends and family. But now she saw it differently. Aging wasn't something to fear, it was a process to embrace, to adjust to, and to work with. And she had a role in shaping how it looked. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how much she had learned from this journey. The small adjustments she had made to her hydration habits had led to so much more than just better sleep. They had led to a mindset shift. She now approached her health with curiosity, with a sense of empowerment that she hadn't had before. It wasn't about looking for quick fixes or accepting what others told her she should feel. It was about making intentional choices and trusting her body. Talia also realized how important it was to share this newfound wisdom with others. It wasn't just for her, it was for those around her too. During a weekend gathering at Anne's house, Talia found herself talking more openly about the changes she had made and how they had impacted her life. Her friends, who were often quick to dismiss any attempt at change, listened intently as she spoke. Talia shared how simple actions, like drinking water at the right times, had helped her reclaim her nights and her energy. As she spoke, she noticed something shift in their faces, a mixture of curiosity and skepticism, but also hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could learn to take control of their own health in the same way. After the gathering, Anne pulled her aside. "Mom, I have to say, I'm proud of you," she said, her eyes softening. "I know it wasn't easy, but you really did it. You found a way to take control, and I think that's something I need to learn too." Talia smiled, her heart full. "It wasn't easy, Anne, but it wasn't about making big changes all at once. It was about finding small ways to feel better. It was about taking things one step at a time." Anne nodded thoughtfully. "I think I've been waiting for the perfect moment to make changes. But maybe the best thing I can do is start small like you did." That conversation with Anne was a turning point for Talia. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about sharing what she had learned, spreading the idea that health wasn't a destination, but a journey. Aging didn't mean losing control. It meant learning to adjust and adapt, to make conscious decisions that would allow her to thrive at every stage of life. As the weeks passed, Talia continued to enjoy the benefits of her changes. Her nights were more restful, but more importantly, her days were filled with new possibilities. She started taking longer walks through the park, enjoying the fresh air and the quiet moments. She spent more time reading and even picked up her gardening again, tending to her roses with the same care she had in her younger years. Her energy was back and she was determined to make the most of it. One evening, as she sat on her porch with a cup of chamomile tea, Talia reflected on how far she had come. There had been a time when she thought her health was something she had no power over, something she simply had to accept as it was. But now she knew better. She knew that the power to shape her future, to improve her health, and to live with vitality was hers to claim. She wasn't done yet. Talia still had plenty of life left to live, and she was ready for whatever came next. With each new day, she felt more confident in her ability to continue making choices that aligned with her well-being, that would allow her to age gracefully, and most importantly, on her own terms. For the first time in a long time, Talia felt like she had everything she needed to truly embrace this next chapter of life. And with that peace came a quiet, steadfast strength, a strength she would carry with her for years to come. As Talia continued on her journey, she began to notice how the changes she had made in her own life were slowly rippling out, affecting those around her in ways she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just about her better sleep or the renewed energy that filled her days. It was about the way she carried herself, the way she spoke about her experiences, and how that, in turn, inspired others. It was as if by taking control of her own health, she had unknowingly given permission to others to do the same. One afternoon, Talia found herself at a family gathering, surrounded by her children, grandchildren, and a few close friends. As the conversation turned to the usual topics, vacations, work, and the grandkids' latest accomplishments, Talia couldn't help but notice her friend Margaret sitting quietly at the table. Margaret, a woman in her late 60s, had always been a little more reserved than the others, but today she seemed particularly withdrawn. Talia had known Margaret for years, and she could tell that something was weighing on her. After a while, Talia leaned over to her. "Margaret, how have you been? You've been a little quiet today," she asked gently. Margaret paused, her eyes flickering with hesitation. "I've been feeling a bit off, Talia," she said with a sigh. "You know, the usual, tired, drained, like I just can't get a good night's sleep. I've tried everything, but it's not working." Talia's heart softened. She had been where Margaret was, stuck in the cycle of sleeplessness and frustration, unsure of where to turn. But now she had a different perspective, a way forward that had helped her reclaim her nights. "Margaret," Talia began softly, "I know exactly how you feel. I was there not long ago, but you know what? I made a few small changes and it's really been helping. Margaret looked at her with curiosity, her interest piqued. What kind of changes? Talia smiled, a sense of pride rising in her chest. Well, it started with something simple, how I drink water. I used to drink too much too late in the day and it was keeping me up all night. But when I started adjusting my hydration habits, drinking more in the morning and afternoon, and cutting back in the evening, it made a huge difference. It's not about depriving yourself, but about being mindful. Margaret's face softened with a mix of surprise and hope. That sounds so simple. I've been overthinking it, trying all sorts of remedies. But maybe I just need to slow down, listen to my body more. That's exactly it, Talia said. Our bodies are telling us what they need. We just have to pay attention. And the best part is, you don't need any medications or special products. It's all about creating a routine that works for you. Margaret nodded, her face lighting up with something close to relief. You know, I've been so caught up in trying to fix things quickly, I didn't realize that something so simple could make a difference. Maybe I'll give it a try. Talia felt a warmth spread through her at the thought of passing on what she had learned. This wasn't just about her, it was about sharing the power of small changes, of taking control of one's health in a way that was sustainable and empowering. As she looked around at her family, she realized that this transformation wasn't just for her, it was for everyone. Each person in her life had their own struggles, their own challenges with aging, and the thought that she could help them with the wisdom she had gained filled her with gratitude. In the weeks that followed, Margaret started to implement some of the changes Talia had suggested. She began to shift her water intake, adjusting the timing of her drinks throughout the day, just as Talia had done. At first, she wasn't sure if it would work, but as the nights went by, Margaret started to notice the difference. She no longer woke up several times, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle over her. Instead, she was sleeping longer stretches, waking up with a sense of restfulness she hadn't known in years. One morning, Margaret called Talia, her voice bright with excitement. Talia, I have to thank you. I've been sleeping so much better. It's been a few weeks now, and I feel like a different person. I didn't realize how much those little changes could help. Talia's heart swelled with happiness. She had helped a friend, but in doing so, she had also strengthened the bond between them. It was a reminder that sometimes the simplest acts, like sharing a piece of wisdom or offering a hand, could have the greatest impact. But it wasn't just Margaret. Over time, Talia began to see how her transformation was affecting those around her in ways she hadn't expected. Her children, seeing how she had taken charge of her health, began making small changes in their own lives. They started asking her questions about what they could do to stay healthy as they aged, and Talia realized that in leading by example, she had sparked a ripple effect, one that wasn't just about hydration, but about taking responsibility for one's health and well-being. Talia's own perspective on aging had shifted completely. She no longer saw it as something to fear or resist. She saw it as a chance to keep learning, to keep adjusting, and to keep growing. Every small change she made had brought her closer to the life she wanted to live, and now she had the power to help others do the same. As she sat on her porch one evening, looking out at the sunset, Talia felt a deep sense of peace. She was no longer bound by the fear of what aging would bring. She had learned that with the right mindset, with small but consistent actions, she could continue to thrive, to live fully, and to share that vitality with others. Aging wasn't a decline, it was a new beginning, and this was just the start of what Talia knew would be a vibrant, meaningful chapter of her life. As the months passed, Talia found herself settling into a rhythm she had longed for but never truly believed was possible. The nights that once seemed endless, full of restless tossing and turning, were now filled with much-needed sleep. The constant trips to the bathroom had become a rare inconvenience rather than a nightly ritual. More than just a change in her physical health, Talia felt an emotional shift as well. She wasn't just living for the moments of calm and peace at night, but embracing a newfound sense of freedom. The freedom came from understanding that she was no longer a passive participant in her health journey. For years, Talia had listened to well-meaning advice from doctors, friends, and family, always hoping for an easy fix to her problems. But now, she was living proof that small, intentional changes could create a ripple effect, improving not just one aspect of life, but her overall well-being. Every morning, she woke up feeling more rested, more alive, and more connected to the world around her. One evening, as Talia prepared dinner for herself and Anne, she reflected on how different her life had become. Gone were the days when she felt like her body was betraying her, when aging felt like a slow, inevitable decline. Now, she felt like an active participant in her own health, finding joy in the small changes she had made and the lessons she had learned along the way. It wasn't about perfection, it was about progress. Each day, Talia felt stronger, more capable, and more at peace with herself. Anne walked into the kitchen, setting down her purse and giving her mother a warm hug. "It smells amazing in here, Mom," she said, her smile brightening the room. "You've really gotten back to your old self, haven't you?" Talia smiled softly, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I think I have," she replied. "I've learned that it's not about fighting against aging, but about learning how to move with it. We can choose to thrive no matter how many candles are on the cake." Anne sat down at the table, her eyes filled with admiration. "You're really living it, Mom. I've been watching how much more energy you have, how you're doing things that you haven't had the energy for in years. It's inspiring." Talia chuckled, her eyes sparkling with pride. "It's all about taking it one step at a time, Anne, making small changes, sticking with them, and listening to your body. I think that's the key. It's never too late to start, and it doesn't have to be a huge overhaul. It's the little things that make a big difference." Over dinner, the conversation shifted from Talia's journey to the broader topic of aging and health. Anne, always the curious one, asked Talia about her daily routines and how she had managed to make such positive changes. Talia shared everything she had learned, from adjusting her hydration schedule to being mindful of how she nourished her body. But what stuck with Anne the most wasn't just the practical advice, it was the way her mother had embraced her health, her body, and the process of aging. "You know, I used to think that getting older meant slowing down, giving up, and just accepting what comes," Anne said thoughtfully. "But watching you, I see that it doesn't have to be that way. You're proving that we can still be strong, active, and in control, no matter what our age is." Talia's heart swelled with pride at her daughter's words. "You can, Anne. We all can. It's not about denying the changes that come with age. It's about adapting, staying connected to ourselves, and not giving up. Life doesn't slow down just because we get older. It's about finding a new pace, a new way to live." As the evening drew to a close, Talia felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had been through so much, the sleepless nights, the frustration, and the uncertainty about what aging would mean for her. But now she saw aging in a different light. It wasn't a time to retreat or become passive. It was an opportunity to reframe how she viewed herself, her health, and her life. And as she watched the sunset from her porch that evening, she realized that the journey she had taken wasn't just about improving her sleep. It was about reclaiming her life. With each day, Talia felt more confident, more in control, and more connected to the world around her. Aging wasn't something to fear, it was something to embrace with open arms. And as she sat in the quiet of the evening, her heart full of peace, she knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where she was fully alive, fully engaged, and fully ready for whatever came next. Talia's life had changed in more ways than she could have imagined. What had started as a simple effort to address her nighttime bathroom trips had blossomed into a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and renewal. It wasn't just the sleep that had improved, it was the way she saw herself and the way she approached life. Every day was a chance to embrace the changes that aging brought with grace, strength, and wisdom. And as the months went by, Talia began to see that her transformation wasn't just affecting her, it was creating a ripple effect in the lives of those she loved. One afternoon, as Talia sat on her front porch, sipping a glass of water, she watched as the world around her unfolded. The birds were singing, the trees swaying gently in the breeze, and the sun cast a warm, golden light over everything. It was a quiet afternoon, but one filled with peace. For the first time in years, Talia felt as though she was exactly where she was meant to be, fully present, fully alive. Her thoughts drifted to her children and the conversations they had shared about her newfound energy and health. Talia had always been a role model for her family, but now she realized that her journey had become a powerful lesson. She wasn't just showing them how to live better, she was showing them how to live fully, no matter the obstacles that come with aging. She had learned to take small, intentional steps toward a healthier life, and in doing so, she had not only transformed herself, but had also given her children a blueprint for how to age with strength and dignity. That evening, as Anne came over for their weekly dinner, Talia noticed how much she had changed. There was a sense of peace and fulfillment in her daughter's demeanor that hadn't been there before. Anne had always been a busy woman, juggling work, family, and her own commitments, but tonight she seemed more relaxed, more grounded. As they sat down to dinner, Anne took a deep breath and smiled. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, the way you've been taking care of yourself. You've really inspired me." Talia's heart swelled with pride. "I'm glad to hear that, sweetie. It wasn't easy at first, but I've learned that it's the small things that add up. Every step I take, no matter how small, makes a difference." Anne nodded, her eyes soft. "You've shown me that it's never too late to make a change, to take control of our health. I've started being more mindful of how I eat, how I hydrate, and I'm getting better sleep too. It feels good to have some control back." Talia smiled, reaching across the table to take her daughter's hand. "I'm so proud of you, Anne. You don't need to make big changes overnight. It's about taking one step at a time and listening to what your body needs. You're doing great." As they finished dinner, Talia realized just how far her journey had come, not just in terms of her own health, but in how she had impacted the people around her. Her transformation had become more than a personal victory. It had become a shared experience, one that had touched her family, her friends, and everyone she came in contact with. She was no longer just the woman who struggled with sleepless nights and exhaustion. She was a living example of how to embrace change, how to age with grace, and how to take ownership of one's health. The next day, as Talia walked through the park with her best friend Margaret, the two of them talked about everything that had changed in their lives. Margaret had taken Talia's advice to heart, and though it had been challenging at times, she too was beginning to feel the benefits. The walks had become more of a ritual now, and with each step, Margaret seemed to radiate a quiet strength that was so familiar to Talia. "I can't believe how much better I'm feeling, Talia," Margaret said, her face glowing with a sense of satisfaction. "I've started drinking more water during the day, and I've really cut back on the evening drinks. I sleep through the night now for the most part. It feels like I've gotten my life back." Talia smiled warmly at her friend. "It's amazing what small changes can do. I think the key is consistency. It's about making the decision to take control and stick with it, even on the tough days." Margaret nodded in agreement. "You're right, and I think what's made the difference is how you've taught me to listen to my body. It's not just about following a rule. It's about understanding what works for you." The two friends walked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, both of them enjoying the newfound peace in their lives. For Talia, the joy wasn't just in her own transformation, it was in witnessing the ripple effect of that change in others. She had started this journey alone, but now she could see that her efforts had touched so many people. And that, more than anything, was the true reward. As Talia continued to embrace her new lifestyle, she realized that the path forward wasn't about perfection. It was about finding a balance, about making conscious choices, and about being patient with herself. She was no longer in a rush to fix anything. Instead, she was living with intention, embracing each moment as it came. She was more present, more aware, and more grateful for every new day. And as the seasons changed, bringing a new chapter of life with each passing day, Talia knew that this was just the beginning. She had discovered the secret to aging gracefully, to embracing change, and to living with vitality, no matter the challenges. With her family, her friends, and herself as her greatest support, Talia was ready to step into whatever came next with open arms, because she knew that no matter what, she had the power to keep moving forward, one step at a time. It had been several months since Talia first made the decision to change her hydration habits, and as she sat on her porch one late afternoon, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she reflected on how far she had come. The transformation wasn't just in her health, it had permeated every aspect of her life. Her days, once clouded by the haze of exhaustion and frustration, were now filled with clarity, energy, and a renewed sense of purpose. But more than anything, Talia felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons learned, for the changes she had embraced, and for the newfound understanding of herself and her body. As the seasons changed, Talia found herself continuing the practices that had served her so well. She still drank her water mindfully, making sure to hydrate early in the day, and she had become more conscious of how her body responded to the food she ate and the activities she engaged in. But it wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about balance, about living in harmony with her body's rhythms. And that made all the difference. One evening, as she prepared a simple dinner of roasted vegetables and grilled chicken, Talia's thoughts drifted to her family. Her children and grandchildren, who had witnessed her transformation, were beginning to embrace some of the same practices. Anne, who had once been skeptical, had started drinking more water during the day and was seeing positive changes in her own energy levels. Even her grandchildren had begun to take an interest in their health, asking questions about hydration and healthy eating. Talia smiled to herself, knowing that her journey had inspired others to make small, meaningful changes in their lives too. She wasn't just helping herself, she was helping to create a ripple effect, one that could spread through her family and beyond. The joy of seeing her children and grandchildren taking an active role in their health was immeasurable. Talia had always been the one to give advice, to offer support, but now she was seeing how her own journey had empowered those around her to take charge of their health too. It was a beautiful, humbling experience to know that her actions were not just changing her own life, but were influencing the lives of those she loved. As she sat down to enjoy her dinner, Talia's phone rang. It was Anne. "Hey Mom," Anne said with a hint of excitement in her voice. "I've been meaning to tell you, I've been following some of your advice about hydration, and I've really noticed a difference. I'm sleeping better, and I feel more energetic during the day. I can't thank you enough for showing me that it's never too late to make a change." Talia's heart warmed at her daughter's words. "I'm so proud of you, Anne. It's not about big changes. It's about making small adjustments that work for you. You've got this." They chatted for a while longer, talking about their plans for the weekend and how Anne had started incorporating more healthy habits into her routine. As the conversation ended, Talia felt a deep sense of fulfillment, not because she had fixed herself, but because she had learned to listen to her body, to make choices that worked for her, and to share those lessons with others. And that, she realized, was the true gift. Later that evening, as she sat on her porch, Talia looked out at the quiet street, the night settling in around her. It had been a long journey, full of challenges, doubts, and moments of frustration, but it had also been a journey of growth, resilience, and hope. She had learned to embrace the changes that aging brought, not as something to fear, but as an opportunity to adapt, to evolve, and to thrive. Talia had come to understand something profound. Aging didn't have to mean losing control of your health or your life. It was about making small, consistent changes, about listening to your body and honoring its needs. It was about choosing to live with intention, to find joy in the small moments, and to embrace each new chapter with an open heart. As she looked up at the stars that dotted the sky, Talia felt a quiet peace settle within her. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure: she was ready to continue embracing each day with the same strength, curiosity, and grace that had guided her thus far. And with each step, she would continue to inspire those around her to do the same. The journey was far from over, it was only just beginning, and Talia, with all the wisdom and strength she had gained, was ready to face whatever came next. As Talia's journey unfolded, two major transformations became clear. First, the simple yet profound shift in her hydration habits unlocked a new chapter of rest and energy. Where sleepless nights once stole her peace, Talia now enjoyed calmer evenings and more restful sleep. She no longer saw aging as a gradual decline, but as an opportunity for growth and adaptation. Second, her emotional shift from frustration and fear to empowerment and confidence was just as significant. She learned to listen to her body, making small but intentional changes that allowed her to thrive, not merely survive. This journey wasn't just about changing habits, it was about embracing the process of aging with a renewed sense of purpose. Talia's transformation wasn't perfect, but it was hers, a testament to the power of small steps, consistent action, and self-compassion. If you find yourself facing similar struggles, remember that you, too, can reclaim your health and well-being. Like Talia, it's not about perfection, but about finding balance and taking action, one small change at a time. Your journey is unique, and you have the power to shape it. As we close, remember this: the path to transformation is never linear, but every step you take is a step toward reclaiming your strength and vitality. Embrace the process, trust yourself, and take one small step today. You too can find the peace and energy you deserve no matter where you are on your journey. The future is waiting, and it's brighter than you think.